Scene 4 brings the anthology to its most emotionally complicated encounter by placing Keisha's emerging lesbian identity inside a relationship already structured by trust, authority, secrecy, and unequal power. The scene begins quietly, with Keisha calling Veruca and asking whether she can come to her room. On the surface, the request is ordinary. Keisha has chosen not to join the rest of the group for dinner and seems to want company. Yet the choice immediately suggests that Veruca has become a particular source of comfort. When Keisha arrives, Veruca is working on the next day's schedule, reinforcing her position as coach and therefore as someone responsible for Keisha rather than simply another friend. Keisha asks whether Veruca wants to get food with her and even offers to pay. Veruca has already eaten, so Keisha prepares to leave alone, but Veruca stops her and asks the question that begins opening the real subject of the scene: is Keisha avoiding dinner because of Jeff? Keisha admits that she is. Jeff has been pursuing her, and other girls have apparently noticed that she does not return his interest. Keisha explains that she has gone out with him twice, but feels that he expects their relationship to become more intimate than she wants. Her discomfort is not framed merely as uncertainty about one particular boy. Instead, it becomes the doorway through which a more fundamental truth can finally be spoken. Veruca cautiously asks whether Keisha is gay. Keisha's immediate response is not pride, denial, or confusion, but fear. She asks Veruca not to tell anyone. That reaction establishes the emotional stakes more effectively than any declaration could. Keisha knows who she is, but she does not yet live in circumstances where that knowledge feels safe to share. She explains that her father is deeply homophobic and that she fears what would happen if he discovered her sexuality. Only after securing Veruca's promise of confidentiality does she say plainly that, yes, she is gay. For lesbian viewers, this small progression can carry enormous emotional weight because coming out is often less about discovering a hidden fact than calculating whether another person is safe enough to receive it. Keisha's sexuality is not uncertain to her. What is uncertain is the social cost of allowing it to become visible. The scene therefore distinguishes self-knowledge from public visibility. A person can understand herself clearly while still remaining closeted, because disclosure may threaten family relationships, housing, financial support, friendships, education, or simply a sense of physical and emotional security. Veruca initially responds with reassurance, telling Keisha there is nothing shameful about being gay. That affirmation matters because Keisha has apparently been living without many spaces where she can speak openly. At the same time, Veruca asks whether Keisha can really be certain because she has not yet had a relationship with another girl. Keisha answers firmly that she is sure. This is one of her strongest moments. The scene rejects the assumption that queer identity requires external proof. Heterosexual young people are rarely expected to demonstrate experience before their attraction is believed, whereas lesbians and bisexual women are frequently asked how they can know before dating women, or told that attraction is merely curiosity. Keisha's answer asserts that interior knowledge is sufficient. She does not need a resume of relationships to authenticate her orientation. Her problem is access rather than certainty. The girls she knows attend her school or belong to the cheer team, and she fears that becoming involved with someone inside that small social network would expose her. Here, the cheerleading environment takes on a double meaning. It gives Keisha a community of women while simultaneously creating a surveillance network in which privacy feels almost impossible. Teammates notice who spends time with whom, who avoids a boy, who lingers around a coach, and who behaves differently from expectations. The same women-centered environment that could offer solidarity can therefore become frightening for someone who is closeted. This tension will be recognizable to many queer women who have experienced intense female communities as both liberating and restrictive. Female friendship provides emotional closeness that can conceal queer longing. Yet that closeness can also make romantic feelings harder to articulate because naming them risks changing the social meaning of every previous interaction. Keisha appears to have found a compromise by spending more time around Veruca. She can seek the company of a woman she admires without publicly defining that attention as romantic. Veruca notices this pattern and asks whether Keisha has been trying to talk to her about being gay. More pointedly, she asks whether Keisha has a crush on her. Keisha cannot immediately answer. Her hesitation becomes significant because silence is doing emotional work that language has not yet learned to do. She changes the subject by commenting on the heat in the room, and Veruca allows the moment to breathe before returning to the underlying issue. For queer viewers, this inability to say a simple sentence can feel painfully familiar. Saying, "I like you," can be difficult in any relationship, but for a closeted lesbian it can also mean saying, "This part of me is real," risking both rejection and exposure at once. Keisha's invitation to dinner, her offer to pay, her frequent visits, and her preference for Veruca's company have functioned as socially ambiguous gestures. Each could be interpreted as friendliness, admiration, or a student seeking mentorship. Together, however, they reveal a pattern of attachment that Veruca has already recognized. This is precisely how queer longing can hide in ordinary behavior. Women are culturally permitted to be affectionate, complimentary, and emotionally intimate with one another, which can create a protected space for feelings that neither person is ready to name. Yet the ambiguity can become painful because what provides safety also prevents clarity. Veruca tells Keisha that she has noticed being treated almost like a girlfriend. Her question, "Is that how you want to see me?" forces Keisha toward a level of self-definition she has avoided. At this point, however, the scene's power imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Veruca is not simply an older or more experienced queer woman offering guidance, she is Keisha's coach. She controls schedules, occupies an institutional position of authority, and has professional responsibilities toward the young woman confiding in her. That distinction matters enormously. Queer stories deserve to portray complicated attraction without treating every attraction as ethically uncomplicated. Keisha's feelings can be genuine while Veruca's responsibilities remain real. Indeed, taking Keisha's lesbian identity seriously requires taking her vulnerability seriously as well. A respectful queer reading should not suggest that affirmation automatically erases boundaries. If anything, the scene demonstrates why boundaries matter most when someone is isolated, closeted, and intensely grateful to the first person who seems to understand her. Veruca becomes symbolically larger than an ordinary crush because she represents safety. Keisha can tell her the truth she cannot tell her father, teammates, or classmates. That emotional asymmetry can intensify attachment. Within queer communities, mentors, teachers, coaches, older friends, and openly LGBTQ+ adults can become powerful figures for younger or less experienced people because they embody possible futures. Admiration can merge with longing, and gratitude can become difficult to separate from romantic attraction. None of this makes Keisha's feelings false. It does mean that the person holding greater authority carries greater responsibility for maintaining clarity. The scene becomes most interesting when read through that tension rather than simply as the fulfillment of a crush. Veruca says she understands how difficult the situation must be and encourages Keisha to relax. The conversation then moves from verbal disclosure toward increasingly personal discussion of Keisha's fantasies and feelings. For a safe-for-work analysis, the important development is not the physical detail but the emotional transition. Something Keisha has kept entirely private is suddenly being witnessed by the woman around whom many of those feelings appear to revolve. The private imagination that allowed Keisha to explore her identity without consequences is being translated into interpersonal reality. That shift can be exhilarating, but it also increases vulnerability. Fantasies are controlled by the person imagining them. Relationships require negotiation with another person whose desires, responsibilities, and power may differ. Keisha's nervousness, therefore, should not be treated as something to overcome as quickly as possible. It is information. Throughout the sequence, Veruca repeatedly tells her to relax, while Keisha remains visibly uncertain and reserved. In an emotionally grounded reading, those moments invite attention to consent as an ongoing conversation rather than a single threshold. Queer representation becomes stronger, not weaker, when uncertainty is respected. Women who have spent years suppressing their feelings may need time to distinguish what they genuinely want from what they think another person wants them to want. This is especially true when the other person is an authority figure whose approval already matters. The film consequently creates a complicated contrast between liberation and pressure. Keisha's confession is liberating because she finally speaks her identity aloud to someone who does not reject her. Yet the setting also reminds us that acceptance alone does not guarantee an equal relationship. Veruca's curiosity about Keisha's private thoughts can be read as validating because she refuses to treat lesbian desire as disgusting or impossible, but it can also be read critically because a coach should understand the vulnerability inherent in such disclosure. This ambiguity prevents the scene from functioning merely as uncomplicated wish fulfillment when approached seriously. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to discuss what ethical recognition should look like. Recognition means more than saying that queer feelings are valid, it means protecting the person who entrusts those feelings to you. For Keisha, the deeper need underneath the encounter appears to be the desire to exist somewhere without pretending. Jeff represents the heterosexual script waiting for her outside the room. She has gone on dates with him despite feeling no genuine interest, perhaps because dating a boy is socially legible and therefore safe. Her teammates can interpret that relationship without question. Her father would presumably approve. Yet compliance produces alienation. She avoids the group dinner partly because Jeff's pursuit forces her into a role she does not want. Veruca's room initially represents the opposite, a place where Keisha can stop performing heterosexuality. That contrast speaks powerfully to lesbian experiences of compulsory heterosexuality, in which relationships with men may be treated as the default future while attraction to women must be separately discovered, named, defended, and disclosed. Keisha has already learned that simply declining a man's attention attracts scrutiny. Other girls notice. Veruca notices. Jeff apparently continues pursuing her. Her lack of interest becomes a social mystery requiring explanation because heterosexual desire is assumed. This dynamic illustrates why coming out can feel less like announcing private information and more like correcting an entire story that other people have written on one's behalf. Keisha has been cast as a potential girlfriend for Jeff before she has publicly claimed the possibility of having a girlfriend herself. The scene also speaks to women beyond lesbian experience because its underlying conflict concerns the right to refuse expectations. Keisha does not owe Jeff attraction because he is nice enough. Women are frequently encouraged to justify rejection by identifying some defect in a man rather than simply acknowledging absence of desire. Veruca initially asks whether he is not Keisha's type, but Keisha's explanation moves beyond type. She simply is not interested. Her sexuality clarifies the situation, yet even heterosexual women can recognize the pressure to reward persistence, politeness, or attention with romantic availability. The broader feminist dimension of the scene lies in insisting that a woman's internal response matters even when nobody around her understands it. Keisha's longing for Veruca similar permission. What she deserves is safety, patience, community, and the freedom to decide how, when, and with whom she becomes visible.